Hey, Robert, thanks for sending in your video. It was great catching up last week. Super excited to be working with you, hopefully more frequently throughout the year and obviously at your event as well. So I read through your notes and thanks for kind of talking about all of that. So when I read your notes and I watch your driving, to me, the number one issue that comes across is maybe it kind of comes down to our vision and having a little bit of we need to have more clarity on what our reference points are, when we should be kind of getting our eyes into specific reference points first before we start to work on how aggressively we get back to throttle, how late we're going to be braking. We first need to get our vision kind of fundamentally fixed and hunting for the next spot. So what I want to talk about is there are 5 reference points for every corner, and our reference points, and what I would like you to be able to do ahead of your Buttonwillow race weekend is get a track map out and go watch an onboard video. And I'm going to point these out in every one of these corners. This is what we highly focus on this coaching session, and really write down my reference points for every corner and do it backwards. So the most important point or most important reference point is actually our very last reference point, which is going to be what we call, this is going to sound a bit strange, but our exit apex reference point. So why do I use the word apex in there? Because most of the time when we think about an exit or exit reference point, we're kind of like, hey, just get out to that curb. It's a very broad thing, but our exit needs to be very specific, because what you're going to see here is, when do we get out in parallel with this exit curve? Notice how you get out in parallel with this curve only at the very end of it, which means you're not unwinding the steering wheel as early as I'd like to see. And we can really see here, you can see that there's rubber being laid down here, right? Like this curb is got dart. So that means race cars are out on this curb already. And see how we're about almost more than a half car width away from it. So what I first want to do is figure out my exit reference point. Where do I want to start to get out to this exit curve? And it's roughly right in this area here. So see how you're only getting out in parallel way out over here. I want to get out in parallel with this exit curve right now. So my first reference point is mid curve on the exit curve. My next reference point is going to be the apex point. And this is why we're starting to turn it a little early, is we're looking in actually probably too early to this corner. So number 1, exit reference point. Number 2 is our apex point. In this corner right now, it's right about here. And in terms of timing for our eyes, I need to be looking at a reference point long enough to get the direction of the car correct. So right now, you're heading towards this apex point. So this is where I want to start to get my eyes up and looking for the exit reference point. But I don't want to do that earlier than this. And what I think is happening is, on our reference point for the turn-in point, this is where we're starting to get our eyes in too early. And we're starting to look in for the apex point too early before we've identified our turn-in point. So our turn-in point's roughly about there. So what I need to be doing is having my focal point of my vision staring, looking down this end or this turn-in point longer. And I need to have a very clear idea of where is my turn-in point, which is roughly a car length before the end of this curve. So what I'm doing here is I'm working the corner backwards, right? And then before this, the very first reference point is going to be our initial brake application spot, right? And this reference point is going to probably be the start of this curve, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm braking at the start of this curve every single lap. It's a reference point, right? So sometimes I'm braking a little bit deeper, sometimes I'm braking a little bit earlier. It's just helping me find a spot on the racetrack that's kind of turning my vision into being more specific. And the more of these that we've got, you should be really going from reference point to reference point to reference point, right? So on this racetrack in turn 1, racing backwards, I'm looking for my brake point. I'm looking for my brake reference point, brake reference point, brake reference point. Okay, I see it. I'm heading towards it. Now I'm looking for the turning point. Okay, I'm looking for the turning point, looking for the turning point, looking for the turning point, looking for the turning point. Okay, I'm getting closer. Now I'm starting to get my eyes in for the apex point. Now I'm looking for the apex, looking for the apex, looking for the apex. I've got the car trajectory headed to where it needs to be. Okay, now I need to look up for that exit reference point, exit reference point, exit reference point, open, 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 open. And now the next thing here is I'm looking for, there's no break for the next corner. So I'm looking for the turning point for the next corner, turning point, turning point, turning point. You can see here, what I want you mentally thinking about is working from reference point to reference point to reference point and having these clear reference points in every single corner. That's what we really need to do as race car drivers. And that's going to help build the consistency as well. So here, right now, my turning point, it's harder Buttonwillow, right? Because there's less clear reference points. Like there really isn't much of a reference point here. So my reference point is more the visual for this next curve. Your turning point's really good here. Looking for the apex, great. Looking for the next apex, great. Looking for the next apex, great. Now I'm starting to head towards it. So I'm looking to the left, great. Now I'm heading towards it. I'm looking for the next set one. So you can see how I'm always ahead of the car with my vision. So now coming in here, this is a corner where we've got a brake zone, right? So I know my brake zone's roughly in here. I'm going to use the reference point as this curb. I'm looking, I know my turn-in marker is going to be just as I come away from that curb. I want to start to turn in. I know exactly my apex reference points this right at this curb as well. And let's talk about the exit, right? So right now I've got the car headed towards where I need it to be. Now I need to look for that exit reference point. So you can see here, we can use more track on the exit. We're not using it. So let's start to get our eyes up and think about, hey, I want to use a little bit more track here. Maybe not all of it, but a little bit more. So I need to get my eyes up, and that's going to help me naturally bring in a little bit more speed through this corner. So it all comes down to reference points. And what we're going to see here is in our next kink, we're going to make a small mistake. And that mistake comes from a lack of a clear reference point. So right now, I should be looking in for this curve right here. And I know I want to be apexing that curve. But what we're going to see here is I think our eyes are a little low. We're going to not really turn in until it's too late. We're out in the marbles. And now we're just kind of like running out of room. And we're almost, oh shit, we're running out of road. That right there, that mistake is purely due to our vision. So we need to be looking for this curve, apexing this curve. Now coming into Phil Hill backwards, right? So we're thinking about what is our reference point in here? Our reference point for the brake zone, once again, is going to be this curve. We're not going to get to that curve, but we're using that in our depth perception of that curve to decide, hey, where am I braking? So we're coming in, braking. Reference point of turn-in marker is going to be, again, it's hard in here, right? But we're going to use like a distance after this curve, like 2 car lengths after that curve, start to bend it in. I think your line's actually pretty good here. Your apex point's good here, but our eyes are low on corner exit. We're not using as much track as we need to on exit here. So look at this. Look how much road you've got out there. Let the car be free as possible. And this is going to be the second major note that I want to see through the middle part of this lap. Is let the car be free. Let the car be smooth. We've got that car with more of road out there. Use it. Use every inch of the road. You've got tons of time here to bring it back to the left-hand side of the road. I don't need to be back to the left until now, until I'm turning in. So there's no reason for me to be all the way to the left side of the road, all the way back over here. Use more track, bringing it back to the left, turn it into the right. Great job here. But once again, I don't need to be perfectly to the right side of the road right now, right? I could be using more track. I only need to get back to the right now. So that means that whole time I could have brought a little bit more speed, used a little bit more track to the left, bringing it back to the right, turning it into here to Riverside. We have our vision looking in for that apex curve, right? So we're looking for that apex curve, Now our trajectory is good. Now I'm looking for the middle of the corner, Use a little bit more track up in here and then bringing it back in. So in Riverside, in terms of lines, I don't want to hold this white line all the way through. I want this to be a little bit more like a double apex corner. So what you should be thinking to yourself is here, this is good. Come out a little bit wider, be about a half car width wider, half car width wider, half car width wider. And then what you're really looking for is you're looking through the corner. You're looking for your second apex to come somewhere in this range right here. And that's where I want to drop it back in and get aggressively back to throttle as well. So really focused on that visual reference points. And once again, think about this corner exit. Do you need to be all the way to the left right now? No, you only need to get all the way to the left, way out over here. So that should tell you I can immediately roll more speed to the middle of the corner, right? So come in, apex aggressively, let the car be free. You get our reference point for that exit, right? Use more track in here. And then you've got tons of time to work the car back to the left-hand side of the road, nice and gentle, bringing it back in. This is perfect. I like what we're doing through here. So you can see how our reference points is really what we need to focus on so we get our car placement better. And then once we get our car placement and our eyes focused better, we're going to immediately naturally start to brake better. We're going to naturally start to accelerate better. But then at our next coaching session, once this is fixed, then we can really focus on that. I don't want to give you too much to think about day one. I want to be really focused on the fundamentals. So we're coming in, we're braking, we're focused on that turning point, roughly right in here. Now we're starting to turn it in. We're looking for the apex. Our car trajectory is heading towards the apex. This is where I'm looking for that exit reference point. Unwind. So see how we're not getting out to this exit curve until it's almost too late. We can get out here earlier. So get your vision in there. So for this next section here in the cotton corners, let's talk about what's important. The most important thing is our exit out of this corner here. Getting back to full throttle so we can carry flat all the way down that next straightaway, right? So what I want to see you do is sacrifice a little bit more speed through this right-hander to be more middle of the road, to be faster through this next left-hander. So what we're going to do here is we're going to drive it. This is mostly pretty good. I'd like to see you just a tiny bit more to the left, be a little bit slower in here, maybe a bigger lift, tiny dab of the brakes, so that on exit, our car placement is going to be more here. I don't want to be all the way out to the right side of the road. That's too much, but I want to be more middle of the road so that I can commit back to full throttle earlier through this next left-hander. Instead, you end up using too much track to the next, to that right-hander, and now this left-hander is way tighter than it needs to be. So be more mid-track there to get back to full throttle a little bit earlier. And now again here in traditional turn 2, we're going to make a mistake. We're going to miss our apex point, and it comes from just having our eyes too low. It's blind here, right? It's really hard to see, but we need our eyes looking through the corner. We need to be looking here. You almost want to be like kind of feel like you're picking yourself up in those seat belts to try and look over the edge of the road. So our eyes in here, but because our eyes are too late looking in, we way miss our apex. We run way wide. So again, really focused on getting those reference points in every corner, understanding where do I need to be focused. I need to figure out my reference points for the exit, for the apex, for the turning point, for the brake zone. And I'm looking, once I'm heading towards one, I'm looking for the next one. Once I'm getting close to that one, I'm looking for the next one. That's what needs to be continually doing. You need to be, as a race car driver, every corner, reference point, next reference point, right? So here we're coming in, we're braking, we're looking for the turning point. We're looking for the turning point, which is here. Just as the road's starting to crest, I'm starting to look for the apex point. I'm heading towards the apex point. Now I should be coming in and apexing much closer in here. And then when I will be at the apex point now where your car is, you'll be here, and then you'll be looking for that exit reference point. Now we're tying these all together, one from one to the next, consistently tying dot to dot to dot to dot. Then they come into the final corner. We're looking for the brake zone. Our brake reference marker is going to be the start of this curve. Doesn't mean that we're braking there. We can get flat past it, but it's just a good reference point here. So sometimes I'll use this as a reference point and I'll know I want to be flat past this for 2 car lengths, and I'll kind of feel that, right? So we're getting past it. So now our eyes are starting to look for the turn-in point. And our turn-in point here is sort of where this curve starts to wrap around. So we're looking here for our turning point, and I am starting to only now get my eyes into the apex point. But because you don't have a clear reference point for your turn-in point, your eyes are actually a little early into the apex, and that's why you're starting to turn in a little bit early here. So need a clearer reference point here. Now is where I really want to start to turn in, and now I'm looking for the apex, My car is heading towards the apex point, so now you know it. I'm looking for that exit reference point, which again, let's go look at that here. Where do I want that exit reference point to be? Look at this. Great spot on video. Where's the rubber being laid down? So this right here, that is my exit reference point. That's what I want to be looking for way back as I'm arriving at the apex point. So I'm looking for that point there, about here. Car is headed where I want it to go. Pick it up. Next stop. Exit, exit, exit. Unwind the steering wheel. Unwind. And now you know you can get out there and use that spot, tie it all together. So what I want you focused on in the next track day is having a reference point in every corner. Get a track map out and think about, go watch your onboard video. This is my reference point here. 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 Have that for every corner. And then when you're out there, you know exactly where you should be looking. And then you tie that together from a brake standpoint. Just have a good hit of the initial brakes. Don't worry about how deep you're braking for right now. We'll work on that next. In terms of throttle, just when you tie in your reference points, you'll know I only want to start to pick up the throttle at the apex point. So now you're starting to tie in your throttle with a reference point, and that's going to start to come together. But again, let's work on that next. Let's get our vision right first. That's going to help us be more consistent, more focused as well on the racetrack. It's going to help our line, and we'll go from there. Let me know if you have any questions. And again, looking forward to continue to see you progress.